domesticate and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Party coming on.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the few of you who have come to watch this tonight. It's a big deal for those of you that don't keep up with space news, or good morning, good evening, good morning, whatever you are. This is a big deal. We'll get into the facts, but tonight SpaceX is demonstrating to NASA that the Crew Dragon 2, it's the Dragon capsule that they've used before to send supplies to the International Space Station, except this is a major step towards certification for human flight. It's a human-rated craft. And what that means is it's the first time since 2011 that a human-rated orbital craft is taking off from U.S. soil with the intention of later this year delivering American astronauts to the International Space Station. It will remove our reliance upon Roscosmos and Baikonur Cosmodrome and the Soyuz. It's a big deal. This mission is, I mean, if you look on Twitter and look in space circles, no one has shut up about this all week. So we have an hour and 18 minutes till that launch. About 2 a.m. Eastern time is when SpaceX and NASA have announced they're going to go live with their coverage. We're going to watch, listen in, talk about that as well. But that's why I went live a little bit early, because I want to talk about what's going on tonight as well. So go over some facts about what is going to happen tonight. Crew Dragon Demo 1 is why this is called DM-1. It's launching from Kennedy Space Center at pad 39A, which is the same pad that Atlantis took off from in 2011, which was the last manned mission to leave American soil. It's also the same pad that Apollo 11 took off from, which is why SpaceX leased it for 20 years. It's also the very first. SpaceX is in the reusable booster business. That's how they keep their costs down. If those of you that watched, and this is also for the VOD, those of you who watched New Santara Satu about a week and a half ago know that booster was on its third use, and it will get used again. But the booster in use tonight is the very first time that they're using it. It's B1051, and it's its maiden flight. It also will be recovered on Of Course I Still Love You. And again, for those of you unfamiliar, Of Course I Still Love You is the ship that the drone ship that SpaceX sends out into the ocean, and the rocket comes back down. The Stage 1 rocket or S1 rocket comes down and lands on that pad. And they'll show that as well, which is really cool. But the schedule's like this. Tonight they're going to take off. They're going to do a series of burns that will place it into an intercept with International Space Station, and then on Sunday, about 6 o'clock in the morning? Yeah, 6 a.m. Eastern Time Sunday, Crew Dragon will dock with International Space Station. And it's the word dock's important because SpaceX has chosen to use what's called the NASA standard docking system. And what happens is Crew Dragon's nose cone, so that top cone you see on the left side, actually is on hinges, and it opens. And it will automatically dock directly to ISS, versus what they have done in the past, which is called the common berthing system. And what happens when that is used is the Canadarm comes off the space station and actually grabs the capsule and then drags it toward the docking port. But Crew Dragon is specifically designed to interface directly with NASA's docking system and not be generic in a sense. So the idea that all they have to do is fly it up to the door and lock it's pretty cool. And then it will come back down to Earth next Friday, about 2:30 in the morning, Friday morning. It will splash down. They've chosen not to pursue a ground-based landing. The other cool thing about this mission is there's a couple things actually. The first one is that there is a mannequin, because apparently it's bad to use the word dummy when you're talking about an inanimate object, but there's a mannequin on board called Ripley, because SpaceX loves naming their stuff after science fiction. It's called Ripley, and it has a series of sensors on board that will help NASA get some readings on G-forces and a myriad of other things that help them determine crew survivability as this thing goes up. So the first thing I wanted to show you guys tonight was what the interior of Crew Dragon looks like. So we'll bring this over here. It's a short video, but it does show you guys what Crew Dragon looks like. At the end of the day, if you think about it, Apollo could seat 3 astronauts. Crew Dragon, in its optimal crew configuration, can seat 7. 7 astronauts can go up in this thing. And those couches look a whole lot more comfortable than what was used at Apollo. I can't believe this thing is actually the interior of a spaceship. I mean, compare that to what you've seen in the past. Those touch screens for controls, how just state of the art this thing looks. When the last time we actually had any real experience with capsules with with crews inside them, was space, was Skylab in the 70s, which was just a converted Apollo rocket, and they still just, they've built this thing, and you get to see it go up tonight. There are actually going to be cameras inside. To give you a look at a funny picture, I keep links all week on stuff I want to show you guys, but this is actually, bring it over to the main screen here. This is actually the dummy inside, and this is this little guy right here. Elon Musk tweeted about 2 hours ago that they put a high-tech zero-G sensor inside, and this is a stuffed animal. It's actually from a company called Cosmic Cuddles, and that's their Earth cuddle creature, but they just put a stuffed animal in there so that when they show the camera tonight, you'll be able to see the little stuffed guy leave the chair, which is really cool. But on the far side, you see Ripley. Ripley will stay in the craft. They're also taking cargo to the International Space Station on this mission, and they're also going to have, I guess, the garbage taken out of ISS, and they're going to load that into the capsule. And when that comes back down to the planet on Friday, that's going to be unloaded on splashdown. Well, not into the ocean, but taken home and unloaded. But anyway, I thought that was really cool that they put a little stuffed animal in the capsule. Is a late addition, but really funny that they did that. So, coming back over to this, if you look up on the upper left-hand corner, that's a NASA video. It's on loop. It just gives you an idea of what Crew Dragon looks like. Again, it's 7 passengers. There's a service module stage, just like the same Apollo concepts that sits below it. There, I think it's 5 engines that are on it. And they're vacuum optimized, and that is, once the S2 detaches, this is the spacecraft. And you'll actually see, hopefully tonight on the launch video, that there are solar panels attached to the side. So it's no longer your standard Apollo movie concept anymore, where they're actually going to deploy a solar array laterally on the command or the service section of the spacecraft, and that's what's going to power its electrical, just like the stuff, kind of like the stuff we designed in Kerbal the other night. So it's super, super cool that this is happening tonight. I think I had some other information I wanted to show you guys. That was a Crew Dragon. That's Perm being stupid in God of War. Oh yeah, there was some stuff from past launches, past stuff we've watched together. So the other day when we watched Ariane Space put up the Soyuz that had the OneWeb satellites on it, I had mentioned that the Beresheet lunar lander for the Space IL, which we watched get launched, had run into a computer glitch. The good news is they've rectified that, and they have not burned yet, but they're waiting effectively. Remember that there's that big ellipse they have to come back around on, and they have to come back to periapsis, and when they get to periapsis, they use that Earth's gravitational pull to accelerate, and then they fire that rocket, and they'll use that acceleration to push themselves out into a further elliptical orbit with a much higher apoapsis. So they fixed their computer problem. They essentially have to wait for that cycle to come back around. So they've lost some days on their timeline. So early April is probably not going to happen. It'll probably be mid-April for its initial, I think it's the initial descent attempt is going to be in early April. But we're going to come back and, again, visit Beresheet every single time there's news on it, simply because I feel like that was the first BOSA stream. That was the major payload. I mean, it was the major cool payload on that spacecraft that night. And I feel like that's our baby. Like I want to know what happens. I feel like we shared that together, seeing that thing go up, and to know what happens with it, continually updated to when we do these streams, I think is cool. But yeah, so it's not a dead mission. I was afraid it might be after they had a computer problem, but it seems like they have gotten that fixed. The other piece of news was the Nusantara Satu satellite, which was the big main payload on that initial Thursday night launch where we watched Beresheet go up as well. It's finally in its geosync orbit. The Air Force satellite that was a part of the secondary payload that they wouldn't talk about was actually still attached to Nusantara Satu as it reached geosync, and I believe it's still attached, but they're going to detach it soon. And again, it's behind the curtain of DoD and secrecy, so who knows when it'll come off. But it is still, as of this morning, was still attached to the Nusantara Satu satellite. As for OneWeb, which we didn't finish watching OneWeb because it was going to take like an hour and a half before they reached a point where they we're going to have all 6 microsats deployed. All 6 microsats did deploy successfully. And actually, I wanted to show you the video from that if I can go grab it out of the... There's a lot of articles in here. I love the fact that we have so many automatically posting articles. I can just go find. Here we go. OneWeb satellites deployed in orbit. Yeah, so this is actually... There was a lot of video mock-ups on that... on that web show from Ariane Space, and I really don't like that they did that, but this is the actual video of the launch. Oh, that's not it. I wanted to copy that. There we go. Wow, that's really annoying, Ariane Space. Really buzzy and annoying. So this is what the actual launcher looked like from that OneWeb launch. That's the onboard camera from the OneWeb system. And that's it's actually doing its actual job. That's not a CGI rendering of what they were showing during the flight. And I think it's because the camera wasn't live. Man, that's super glitchy and annoying. So there's the launcher deploying, and those are the actual microsats that are going to provide the internet. That's that small thing drifting to the top of your screen right now. That's what they look like. And I think it's because the video wasn't live. They actually had to wait for the launch vehicle to communicate down the recording. But that is what it looked like. Pretty cool stuff. So, get off of OneWeb and Ariane Space. Speaking of Ariane Space, the launch schedule for March is kind of weird. I'll actually go look at it real quick. So, this website, again, Space Launch Now, is pretty awesome. I use the same data that they use. There's a thing called Launch Library, which is an API to be able to post when things are going live or launching in the channel. But after SpaceX Falcon 9 Block 5 for DM-1 tonight, the next launch, we're not going to be able to watch a ChinaSat launch because they're not going to broadcast it. It's just that simple. We have a Delta 4 launch coming up from Cape Canaveral. That's at 10:58 Eastern Time on March 13th, so it's March 2nd. So you're talking 11 days or almost 2 weeks until we run into another launch that's broadcastable. And then we will come up on Soyuz the next day. And that's from Baikonur Cosmodrome. I'm going to try to broadcast that. But the last Soyuz launch, Roscosmos didn't have a live stream for, and we were all kind of left in a lurch. So we'll plan on having a launch that day, but I can't guarantee there'll be a stream for it. Like, we could talk about it, but I can't guarantee video. And then we get into Launcher 1. Launcher 1 is Virgin Orbit. That's their launch vehicle. I wouldn't count on that happening on time just because Virgin Orbital and Virgin Galactic are notorious for slipping their launch times. So we have like 3 days in a row where there's potential launches. I don't know about midnight, depends on what day of the week that is. But until then, this 11-day gap until there's another launch to really look at. So we'll check in with information on, space-related game streams when we talk about where Bearsheet is and, what might be going on with OneWeb or how this launch went. But in any event, we got about 18 minutes until SpaceX decides to go live, and I covered pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. About an hour and 5 minutes until we go live with Crew Dragon lifting off. Let's put it this way. SpaceX usually doesn't go live with a live stream like an hour in advance or 40 minutes in advance. Usually it's like 20, 30 minutes. So I got a funny feeling they have something special planned tonight that they're going to really show off what they're doing. It's also really odd for them to release the mission patch. And the mission patch is down in the bottom corner. It's a really cool patch. I really want one. It's a milestone mission for them. I have the Falcon Heavy patch now from last year that we talked about during the last SpaceX launch, but it's a really cool patch depicting ISS and the combined service and I guess command modules moving up to ISS. So hopefully they release it later this year. They usually release their patches in packs. I have the most recent pack that's been released, but it'd be really cool to get the next one. So there's not a whole lot of people in chat, and that's fine. And I know it's really early in the morning, but is it common to have launches regularly as we're seeing now? That's a good question. So has it been common to have as many launches as we're seeing now is, I guess, the way that I would respond to that. It has not been. there are a lot of companies doing a lot of things in space, and that's ramping up. So it's been this like steady climb, and then 2019 rolled around and it just went like this. The number of launches we're seeing, I guess, starting in late November, December, and moving into this year, is increasing at a very high rate. And it's because I really truly believe that 2019 is going to be the year of commercial spaceflight, where these companies that have been, around for 15 years, getting their stuff in order, like Blue Origin and, Orbex, who's going to be doing small satellite launches from Scotland, and SpaceX. They've taken their time to get where they are, but it's like the competition aspect of the commercial flight, the fact that some of these companies have stockholders, is starting to come together to where they're starting to push each other, and that's good. That's the good aspect of capitalism that's involved here. The better part is that NASA is standing there saying, we need this, 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 and this. Who's going to do it the best for us? Instead of NASA giving away a government contract to, say, Lockheed Martin through the DoD, and then Lockheed Martin saying, oh, we can do that for $25 million, and ending up spending $1 billion on it, which is exactly what happened with the lunar module. I mean, Grumman didn't know, and it's because when you're building something that's never been built before, there's no way to forecast a budget for something that's never been done, because budgets are based off of past experience, and there is no past experience for a lot of these things. So when you have multiple people or multiple companies that are on parallel paths that are trying to do the same thing, they are forcing each other to innovate, and it's coming to a head now, where SpaceX is in the lead easily with commercial crew. And what commercial crew means, that phrase, commercial crew, means the commercial provider of launch capability of American astronauts. And this is what this is tonight. This is a big step in commercial crew. Boeing is the other big player in it, and it's really a race between SpaceX and Boeing this year as to who is going to pick up that flag that Atlantis left in orbit on STS-135 in 2011. And SpaceX, if this goes well tonight, they'll have an abort test, which actually will use the booster that was used to launch Nusantara Satu to prove that the abort system of the Crew Dragon works. And once they're past that point, it's really bureaucratic and data analysis. There won't be a lot of launches that go toward facilitating putting the crew on board. 2 astronauts are already chosen to drive Crew Dragon into space. There is discussion that could happen as early as the summer, but SpaceX kind of cooled those expectations this week and said, it'd be great, and we really like to hit that mark, but realistically, early fall, mid-fall is when they're targeting to put Crew Dragon in space with personnel on board. But back to the question, no, last year SpaceX launched a lot of stuff last year. I think they had 28 launches last year. I'm looking at the board, a lot of Iridium satellites. There was the test satellite. There were communication satellites put up for other countries. The Telstar Vantage series, GovSat-1. Falcon Heavy was their big ticket item, but there wasn't so many others doing it. Like Arianespace is, I would say, the old girl at this point. Like I kind of alluded to last stream, she's the most expensive option, simply because of how she was built and how Arianespace shunned the idea of recoverability, and it's going to cost them at this point. But Blue Origin, Virgin Orbital, Orbex, ULA, which is Universal or United Launch Alliance, they're all coming together this year. It's really like they've all decided that this is the year they really need to start putting what they've been working on and producing out. And no longer is it vaporware or on paper only, but demonstratable rockets or actual launch vehicles that can deliver payloads. And that's why you're seeing this uptick. I've had these space launch type apps where I've monitored what's been going on for a long time. Sanjo, what's up, man? How you doing? Sanjo Shark 39 is a streamer on Twitch who I watch to learn things in Kerbal Space Program on. Yeah, welcome to FTL on Mixer. They're one of the reasons I stream here. There's a trade-off with it. It uses UDP, so it could be unstable at times. But what was I saying? It totally took me off my train of thought. But I think I think it was kind of wrapping up. That's why you're seeing so many launches this year. But in the past, you haven't seen as many. It's just a matter of those companies are finally starting to put their finished products out into the out into usability. Like they've had contracts for a while, but they haven't been able to, or they haven't been able to. They haven't been scheduled to service those contracts until right around now. Sorry. So anyway, got about 10 minutes until SpaceX goes live. We will obviously switch over to them when they go live. And like I said, I really anticipate them doing something special. But because I've seen a few people bounce back in, I'm going to replay this simply because some people might like to see it. So again, this is the interior of Crew Dragon. Seat 7, super cool looking. I love the fact that I can finally detach in my mind this 1968 technology that has been Apollo. Apollo is amazing for what it, for what it did in its time. But you're talking about, roped computing that went into how that computer did its job. And the idea that there are touchscreen controls inside of here is really awesome. Just how well done this craft looks on the inside, and how you look at Apollo, you look at the Apollo command module, like, man, it looks really cramped in there. And it was, but it wasn't. This thing looks, it's like they could have a cookout in here. Just really cool looking. And then again, the same photo that I showed earlier, come back to it. Like I said, there's a dummy, a mannequin inside named Ripley. And this is what Ripley looks like, sitting in his chair. And then, like I showed earlier, there is Elon Musk being funny. He decided to tweet out that they had put a low-tech, get the picture up, a low-tech zero-gravity testing device. And that is the Cosmic Cuddler that's sitting on the seat opposite Ripley there. And my hope is that, obviously there's a camera inside because it's the same angle they used before. And my hope is that they'll be showing that thing leaving its seat as Zero G's achieved tonight. So we've got about 9 minutes, and we're going to be sitting for a while. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get up for a second and just stretch my legs. I would encourage you guys to do the same thing and just walk around, get a drink, and get comfortable. We're going to be sitting here for a little bit. We're going to sit through their presentation, watch what they have to present. I'm going to choose the SpaceX stream tonight, not the NASA stream, simply because SpaceX, I don't know, for me, they tend to have the better graphics on the screen. But we'll be back. I'm going to leave them up in case they go live. And we'll be back I'll be back in just a second. Thank you for reminding me to use my standing desk. Yeah, I've had back problems all week, so... Oh yeah, by the way, check it out. I've been saving this shirt for tonight. I've had it for a little while. Yeah, Eddie. Welcome to the stream, by the way, Sanjo. Eddie the Head is a bot that I've coded. He's a little bit of a dick. He doesn't like people very much. The tributes that you saw get taken from Mads there, that's the stream currency that gets used for all manner of things, like buying a Kerbal in a game, or in XCOM, buying or editing your soldiers. But yeah, he's kind of a jerk. Good luck with that. He'll win. He's kind of like I said, he's kind of an asshole. All right, guys, but I'll be back in just a minute. I'm gonna, like I said, walk around, use the restroom real quick while I've got a little bit of a stretch until they get ready to go live here. We'll come back. We'll listen to them talk about DM-1. It's gonna be a really cool night. Again, this is super, super important for manned spaceflight. I got to start saying crewed spaceflight. Returning to U.S. soil, hopefully this year, and this needs to go well for that to be a reality. So I'll be right back. Like I said, get a drink, stretch your legs, use the bathroom, and we'll be back in just a minute. Okie doke. I'm back. We are going to kick over here just while we wait for SpaceX. I'm going to take that down so we can just leave that stream up there. So I need to say this. The graphic used on screen on the right-hand side, the infographic that shows where we're launching from, of course, I still have you being used. That's been provided courtesy of someone I'm a patron to, Jeff Barrett at gdbarrett.com. Discussed using his graphics, and here, look we go. Live coverage just kicked off on their screen. Let's make sure that volume is turned up until we know how loud their music's going to be. We'll make that full. When they start talking, I will stop talking. But anyway, that graphic, gdbarrett.com. Jeff very graciously is letting me use his graphics, which saves me a lot of prep time. I can simply use the frame that's there, pop his graphic in there, provide you guys with information. He does great work, and it was very nice of him to let me use them. So I really appreciate it. If you think they're cool and have a spare $5, or just think the work he does is cool, period, his Patreon is off of that website. $2 a.m. Eastern time. So this looks the splash page here looks different than the last SpaceX launch, and I think it's because NASA is also doing it. I think it might be the same coverage. I'm not sure. We'll see who the presenters are when they come out. Let me get Discord back to a place where I can read it. All right, so what we got here? 52 minutes until launch, about 4 minutes until SpaceX goes live. There was a good Mads had a great question earlier about commonality of launches and how it seems to be that we're seeing so many. And all I can say is it's a stupid exciting time to be interested in space. One company I would tell you to follow, if you're not following them, is a company called Orbex. They are 3D printing engines, which is cool. They're not making boosters as large as Falcon 9. They are making them to put small sats in orbit, and they're working in conjunction with the UK Space Agency to build the United Kingdom's first spaceport in Scotland. It's a project that's going to help revitalize a failing industry town in Scotland. But the idea that they're effectively 3D printing almost the entire rocket, and also they're going to be using methane as their primary fuel. Really cool stuff. I learned about that listening to Interplanetary Podcast. But another cool thing I listened to this week was there's another podcast called Orbital Mechanics. And there was a PhD candidate on their stream, and she was basically talking about how hypergolic fuel systems work, which is you play Kerbal Space Program and you use liquid fuel, you're using a hypergolic system. Basically how not methane, but wow, my brain is blowing on the word hydrazine. Hydrazine and an oxidizer, when combined, two liquids or two substances combined, how they produce the flame. Yeah, I haven't played. I'm nowhere near as good at it as you, Sanjo. I'm just not. I still struggle with plotting my own intercepts. I watch you guys for a reason. Let's put it that way, so I can learn how to use the nodes to plot intercept courses. Like getting into orbit on my own is an accomplishment. I mean, I've put space stations in orbit and assembled things, but it's like, struggle. It's a struggle. It is a struggle. You've only watched me put 3 rockets in direct orbit. It's not, that part's not hard. It's getting 2 things really close to each other and then slowing down in time. That's the hard part. But yeah, anyway, I was listening to this podcast, and it was interesting to talk about okay, so I won't ever be as ridiculously detailed as EJ, because he's like doing engineering testing on everything before he flies it. But the number of times I screw up before I get it right, it's probably like a 20-to-1 ratio. So yes, I can accomplish it, but I'll accomplish it after lots and lots of errors. But the cool thing about this hypergolic fuel system is that when the substances combine, even in a liquid state, it's not the liquids that ignite, it's the gases that come off of the liquid combination that is ignitable, or is not ignitable, but which spontaneously combusts. And that is what actually produces, in a liquid fueled engine, that uses a hypergolic fuel system. That's what provides the impulse thrust that comes out of the nozzle. And I thought that, I mean, I kind of knew about that, but the way in which he described it, getting down to the way in which the individual atoms strip off of their base, molecular forms and combine, was really cool. So here comes SpaceX. But if you think that blurb of nerdism was cool, follow, or go look at Planetarium, or was it Orbital Mechanics podcast. Give me a check on the volume of that video. I can turn that up.
30 seconds.
I think that's good right there.
Put that cookie down.
Leech, what's up? What do I think about the dual expansion nozzle rumors and Raptor that ended up not panning out? Yeah, it would have been cool. I also, did you see that they talked about, they burned up that test engine, maximizing its thrust?
5.
Mini Leech was right, Leech.
3, 2, 1. Ignition.
You are looking at a
Only 3
live
seconds ahead.
view of SpaceX's first Crew Dragon spacecraft atop a Falcon 9 rocket, awaiting liftoff in just under an hour from now as part of the first crew demonstration mission to the International Space Station for NASA. Good evening and good morning, and welcome to the live broadcast of NASA and SpaceX's first crew demo mission to the space station.
Yep.
My name's Dan
On
Hewitt.
your
I'm a
Carbon
public
Engine.
affairs officer with NASA, and
I do
I'm
my
really
best
excited
during
to
the
be here at
streams to not
SpaceX
speak over the
headquarters in Hawthorne,
presenters.
California,
But yes,
for
the way they were
today's
looking at carbon fiber tanks for BFR, and it was way beyond operating capacity.
Awesome to be here.
Thank you for coming. My name is Lauren Lyons, and I'm
A little
Senior
bit.
Flight Reliability Engineer here at SpaceX. And as you can see, NASA and SpaceX have partnered on both the Demo-1 mission and today's broadcast. We'll be bringing you live coverage from not only here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California, but also NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, as well as the Johnson Space Center in Houston.
As many of you probably
But you
already
guys
know,
have
the
Twitch.
purpose of
That's
today's
Sanjo
mission
on
is
Twitch.
to demonstrate the ability of SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket and the Crew Dragon vehicle to carry people safely to and from the International Space Station.
No problem, man.
Today's mission is a test flight, and while there are no actual humans on board, we're going to be executing every step of this mission as if there were.
It's worth noting that for purposes of this broadcast, we will be using the terms Crew Dragon and Dragon interchangeably to refer to this next iteration of our spacecraft. The Dragon we fly for our CRS missions has already made 16 visits to the International Space Station, but this is the first time that Crew Dragon is making that journey.
It's different because it has the NASA standard docking system on board, not the common berthing system, which means they won't have the Canadarm to berth the capsule, and that's a very big distinct difference in this mission and prior Dragon missions. It could just dock. It doesn't have to be grabbed first.
But for this mission, it allows ample time to conduct all the necessary testing.
It's
and demos
also
prior to
using a
SpaceX's
hinged cover
first
for the docking port
Crew
and
Dragon
not a
with the
throwaway
space
cover, which is what Dragon has
Once
used in the
Dragon
past.
arrives at station, it's expected to stay for about 5 days, during which time it'll undergo a series of checkouts of many of the new systems, as well as the ISS interfaces. While it's docked, it'll deliver some cargo to Space Station that we've launched, but it will also bring some cargo back that the crew will pack up in Dragon on the way back home.
A little more volume
At the
here.
end of that 5-day dock period, Dragon will depart the ISS for a splashdown in the Atlantic Ocean, where it'll be met by recovery crews and transported back to our site at Cape Canaveral.
And for everybody watching and following along at home, if you have a question about this mission or any of the upcoming crewed missions, we'd love to answer them later in this broadcast. You can send them in using the hashtag AskNASA on Twitter.
This is such an awesome and exciting day for the
So
team,
again, this
both
is
at
Pad
NASA
39A,
and SpaceX.
which
With just under an
SpaceX
hour
has
to
leased
kick off,
from
let's check in with the
NASA
team
for,
over in Florida,
I guess, the next
broadcasting
19
live
years
from
now.
Kennedy Space Center.
And it's the same
Thank you,
pad that
Lauren and
Atlantis
Dan. Now, my name is
STS-135 took
Shiva
off from in
Bhattacharya.
2011, which was the last manned mission from American soil.
With NASA's commercial crew program, we are broadcasting live from the press site here at Kennedy.
Yeah, we're actually just across the street from the iconic vehicle assembly
Let's get
building.
that synced
and
up,
just
so that's
over
gonna
3
drive
miles
me
away from our
crazy.
launch site. Now, there are hundreds of members of the media at Cape Kennedy to capture today's historic launch from the equally historic Launch Complex 39A, or LC-39A, which has been a
There we go.
central
Now it's
part
synced.
of the American human spaceflight story. This is the home to both the Apollo and Space Shuttle programs.
Just behind us, you can see the Falcon 9 and Dragon prepared to launch from this historic launch pad.
With a brand new arm.
SpaceX took over Launch Complex 39A in 2014, and after retrofitting it, They have been able to
That's a
support
good
both
idea.
Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy
Because
launches
we'll be
regularly
on our
since
ass by the
2016.
time it's over.
Yeah, actually, there's a great shot on your screen of our two-stage launch vehicle, the Falcon 9. And actually, the crew arm is attached to it. Oh, actually, there
Bye-bye,
the
crew arm.
is separating away from the vehicle. And this test is, we're running this test the same way that we would with astronauts on board. So that would be one of the
It always
steps
feels like
as we prepare to go.
SpaceX
into
doesn't do a lot of
launch.
dry runs on their
Now,
presentation.
Falcon 9 is Falcon 9.
It's still
its
good.
First stage will fire its 9 Merlin engines to propel the vehicle to the edge of space. Once it's burned through most of its propellant, it will separate and attempt to land on our drone ship, which is about 316 miles off the Florida coast. Simultaneously, the second stage will fire its single high-efficiency Merlin vacuum engine to propel Dragon to its target orbit about 200 kilometers above the Earth.
Who knows why it's called
From
Dragon?
there, Dragon will continue
Covered why
with
it's
its
called
first
Falcon
journey
when we
to the
watch New
International
Santara
Space
Satu, but who
Now,
knows why it's called
Crew
Dragon?
Dragon consists of two main structures. The
Or what's it
capsule
named
where we
after?
fly
Let's start there.
pressurized cargo, and soon our astronauts who cannot be exposed to the vacuum of space. And the second main structure is the trunk, where we can carry large unpressurized cargo. A notable difference on the Crew
Nobody?
Dragon vehicle is that it's 8 Super Draco thrusters. These Super Dracos will power
Nope.
the astronauts to safety in the unlikely
It's
event
named
of an
after
emergency.
Puff the Magic Dragon
Dragon's trunk also
because
features new body-mounted
everyone,
solar
when Elon
arrays,
Musk
which you
had
can
this,
see
the
on your
whole
screen
SpaceX
right now.
concept,
They
he
provide power to the
was
spacecraft
told it
as
was,
makes
you
its
know,
way to the
a dream. It was
International
it was never going to
Space Station.
happen. It was just
Also has
imaginary in
new
his head, and
aerodynamic
it's his way of
fins to
trolling
provide
everybody.
stability in the event of that emergency
Believe it or not.
abort, as well as
It's
more
his way of
surface
giving everyone
area
the finger.
for those solar arrays.
Now that was a quick overview of the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon here at Kennedy Space Center. However, let's go quickly over to Daryl Nail, who has a special guest at the Operations and Support Building.
That's right, Stephanie. I'm on the 5th floor of that building, which gives us an elevated view of the launch pad. And we can see the rocket from top to bottom, including the flame trench. It is a beautiful view out here. And then we stretch out a little further, and you can see the guests that have gathered in the infield. They have quite a view as well. This building is also right next to the iconic Vehicle Assembly Building, which is the perfect
There are people on
backdrop
top of the
for our
VAB
guests, as
taking
you
photos tonight.
mentioned. Administrator Jim Bridenstine, thank you for being here. Appreciate your time.
It's a big deal. This many people
all,
are
tell
out
me
there
what
doing
this
this.
launch
There were not this many commentators for New Santara
So
Satu.
this is the first time where we're going to launch American astronauts on American rockets from American soil. The first time since the retirement of the
Well,
space
we're not
shuttle
launching
from
American
Apollo.
astronauts. Let's be
So
clear
this
on that
is really
point. This is a demonstration to prove that we can.
significant achievement
He
in the
sort of
history
misspoke there. We're not. There is no
American
crew on
space
board, even though it's
and,
being called Crew
what
Dragon.
we're interested in,
But
we
this
wanna
is a
make
demonstration
sure
to prove that it's
we keep
possible.
our
There's
partnership
a
with
mannequin
Russia,
on
which
board
has been
named
very
Ripley
strong
that's
for a
going
long
to
period of time,
record
going all
sensory
the way
data and give it back to
the
NASA.
Apollo-Soyuz era. But we also want to make
So
sure we
it's
have
not-
our own
there's no people on it
capability to get
yet.
back and
Hopefully
forth
this
to the
year.
International Space Station, so that we can have this strong partnership where they can launch on our rockets and we can launch on their rockets. But I think another big milestone here is the idea that
Ooh, did you see that lightning in the background? That's not good news.
We're not
How far
purposely
away is
going in and
that?
operating our own rockets at this point. We're looking to a future where we can be a customer, one customer.
Fun
of many
fact,
customers
Apollo
in a
12
very
was
robust
hit by
commercial
lightning
marketplace
twice
in low Earth orbit.
during
And not
initial
just one
ascent once it
customer,
cleared the
many
pad.
customers, which
Two
drives
lightning
down our
strikes
costs
rode
and
its
increases
contrail
our
back down to the
outputs.
pad.
But
It
having
threw the
multiple
entire
providers that are
platform and
competing
avionics
for
system
cost and
off.
innovation,
They had to do
which
an
enables us to
in-flight
have
before
transformational
stage one
technology
separation
that enable
adjustment
us
to
do
the way
more
their
than
fuel
ever
cells were
before.
used
This is really
in order
a
to keep the
big
flight
And one of
going.
those customers, key customer, SpaceX, which is launching tonight. You're here for that launch. You got to tour around today with SpaceX CEO Elon Musk. How was that?
It was a great opportunity. He reminded me that he began this process 18 years ago, if you can imagine that, back in
I think it's
2001. And at the time, you know,
episode
the
13,
intent,
not 13,
was to
episode
put
7
a little
from the Earth
greenhouse
to the
on
Moon.
Mars, and
If
he
you
was
watch
gonna,
that episode, it
you know,
shows what they had to go through
purchase,
to
an
correct
excess
the
ICBM
craft
from
problems when they
Russia.
got hit by lightning.
Of course, he made sure to make clear that it was without the nuclear warhead. But what was fascinating is from that idea where he wanted to put on Mars a little greenhouse. We're talking about 3 feet by 3 feet, just a small greenhouse. And from
Also,
that, he
don't
tried
forget
to buy this excess
that
ICBM, but it was
SpaceX has a
$20
stated
million.
goal of
I just can't
going to
afford that
Mars.
to achieve what I'm trying
And
to achieve.
yes, this is
and
critical
so
to
he
fulfilling
came up
manned
with the
spaceflight to
idea
ISS,
of Falcon,
but
of a
they got
Falcon
bigger
1.
dreams.
And
You start hearing the
after
term
a number
Starship
of failed
later this
launches,
year.
he stuck with it, and by Falcon 4 it was successful. And then of course the partnership with NASA, and a long partnership that's been developing for a long time, and here we are on the precipice of returning to spaceflight from American soil. So it was great to have that opportunity to hear his perspectives, and this is really a big day for NASA. It's a big day for SpaceX, Elon Musk, and the entire team, both teams, NASA and SpaceX.
And we're looking forward to a launch tonight. We appreciate you coming out and joining us. It's going to be an exciting night. We want to toss it back now to Tom, who is at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Tom?
Thanks, Daryl. Good evening. My name is Tom Perderio, and I'm a software engineer here at SpaceX. And hanging right behind me at SpaceX headquarters,
that voice audio
in
sync's not that great.
The very first Dragon spacecraft that SpaceX launched to orbit back in 2010. And now here we are, just less than 40 minutes from launching our first Crew Dragon spacecraft to the space station. It's currently T-minus 38 minutes
so
and 40 seconds.
Funny note, there was there are members of the press who complained about public relations selection of the launch time, as if they had anything to do with it. The launch window is chosen because it's the optimal time for the launch to go up, create a standard orbit, and an optimal transfer window to the station. It has nothing to do with the fact that they wanted to inconvenience the press at large. It happens to be this is the correct time to launch. That's why it's called an instantaneous launch window.
Earlier today, Dragon operators performed a series of
found it funny that there were people from like CBS News basically bitching about the fact that they had to be up at 2 a.m.
If this were an operational mission, late load cargo would have already been loaded onto Dragon the day of launch, which would have been earlier today, and the crew would already have boarded via the crew access arm. Once everyone is safely on board, SpaceX would retract, or you saw SpaceX just retract the crew access arm, which activates the launch escape system. And this allows the initiation of pad escape in the event of
so translating that to English for the non-nerds, Delta V, DV, the margins of the spacecraft, if launched non-optimally, meaning not within the optimal instantaneous launch window, it still had enough. It would have enough Delta V to get there. It would be an inefficient burn and it'd be a waste of fuel. And again, they would never do that due to crew safety. They want to use the optimal window.
So as the team has mentioned, there are no
not to dumb it down, Sanjo, but like I know me, you, and a couple other people are lurking interchangeably use those terms all the time. But one of the points of me doing this for my community is to bridge that absolute nerd gap and make it sort of plain language and interesting. So, yep, I will translate all day long. And if I say something incorrectly, please correct me. I would rather be wrong and told I was wrong.
Let's take a closer look at
I'd rather be wrong and be corrected. I'm not some sort of arrogant guy. I would rather learn if I get something wrong.
As a part of our Demonstration 1 mission, we have a special passenger on board. The technical term for a special passenger is an anthropomorphic test device, or in short, an ATD. But we're just going to call her Ripley. My name is Ali Reza Farjud, and I'm a senior dynamics engineer here at SpaceX. Ripley's job is to feel everything that an astronaut would feel.
That's what makes a good teacher.
She is essentially full of sensors across her body.
I've heard you talk about being past experience with teaching. I love teaching, and I love when the people I train, like, hey, you got this wrong. I'm like, awesome, I just learned something.
About the most sensitive parts of her body.
Plus, I made you curious enough to go figure that out.
Loads, and we're going to use all that information to analyze and make sure our predictions are correct, to design, test, and understand exact behavior of the seat system in Crew Dragon.
Oh, and for those of you that are lurking while we're going through the intro stuff here, if you ever miss one of these, I like watching these. I do post them onto my YouTube channel. It's not a plug or anything, but if you just miss it and you want to see it, like, hey, did Fixer, do that launch? Probably I did if it's between 3 p.m. and midnight Eastern time, and there's always going to be a VOD posted to YouTube.
During a nominal ascent, the crew will
which Mads apparently likes to play at 2 times speed to listen to me talk funny.
On the way back, during a nominal splashdown, the crew will feel like they are diving into a swimming pool. Interestingly,
again, splashdown's Friday. I think they said 6 a.m. So a week from now, effectively, next Friday, 6 a.m. is when the capsule will splash back down. And they are docking with ISS on Sunday around this time, around 2:30.
Are going to be safe, and all our injury metrics are within limits.
So you'll see the craft deploy its solar panels tonight, but they'll start their optimization burns at that point over the next 36 hours.
We're not going to be getting real-time data for this mission. Once Ripley comes back home, she is going to give us all the data, and that's going to get us one step closer to human spaceflight.
It's an interesting choice, not to get real-time data. It's a confident choice, though, to rely on recovery to get the crew data they need, and not have live telemetry from the anthropomorphic whatever device they just called it.
So let's listen in for that call-out on the nets.
Fair, yeah, that's fair. Hopefully, if they have the interface for it. Is there a reason that it's better the recovery ship is automated? Less chance for human error, I would say, is the reason that's done. There's less chance for human pilot error. Yeah, I would, I guess the question I would have is, would they want to interfere with the way in which the mannequin is strapped in for the purpose of re-entry data? Or would they go into Crew Dragon and record it and then take that back in ISS for retransmission if necessary? I don't think they'd mess with the strapping in of the mannequin. I think SpaceX probably would tell them don't do that.
So while we're waiting for the call out for that prop load, we're going to go over to McManus
Again,
Woodend
the little fuzzy guy in there, Cosmic Cuddles, I think is the company, and yes, I went and researched that out, but that's the company who makes those. If you think they're super cute, they have one for like every planetary body.
On her incredible journey. I'm McManus Woodend, and I'm here at Kennedy Space Center. Particularly, I am here at the Banana Creek viewing
one of these
area,
days,
which is right
I will
across
be
the
there.
way from the Saturn V Center. Now, one of the great things about this viewing area here at Banana Creek is you have an unfiltered panoramic view of 5 launch pads. Now,
You can also see the rocket, which I wish I was there doing live.
Which you've already heard so far in the program has quite a
I still haven't heard back on Wallops Island, for those of you that know what I'm talking about. I will probably recontact NASA the next 2 weeks about the social media pass to watch that Northrop Grumman launch. So I'd really love to bring that to you guys live,
they're starting to
like
still
from the site.
filter in, but we're looking at roughly 1,700 in attendance tonight. The vast majority of them are from here in America, so the sentiment of an American-built rocket being launched from American soil, and with the anticipation of American astronauts later this year being flown on that rocket is pretty high. But that's not to say that it's a complete home team type of a game. We do have quite a few representatives from other foreign countries.
Oh yeah, while we're talking about the station, I know that the next expedition is going up relatively soon, and when it does,
just imagine, if you will,
something historic's going to happen. Once the new crew is on board, it'll be the first all-woman, multi-person spacewalk will occur sometime this spring.
Look down at the Earth instead of through the lens of a NASA photo, which we've all become so accustomed to, but with their very own eyes. So with that in mind, those two are the main talking points that I've had with many of the folks here in the audience.
Guy sounds super nervous.
So as you can imagine, the
still lightning in the background. So on that note, there was a lightning advisory over Kennedy Space Center at about 11 p.m. Eastern time, but NOAA gave them the all clear. So that's got to be pretty far off in the distance.
Stephanie, right down the road at our studio. Guys,
because again, yes, I checked the weather.
That's an awesome crowd out there.
Super
now,
nerdy.
We do want to let you guys know that propellant loading has begun on the Falcon 9. Now, also, as a reminder, today's launch is a test flight, and while SpaceX has been transporting cargo...
I love that patch. So the patch is on the back of the laptop on your left with the Crew Dragon. You can't really see it, but in the distance on the patch is ISS. It's a beautiful patch.
Now, we haven't launched astronauts from the U.S. soil to the International Space Station since the Space Shuttle Atlantis landed in 2011. Today's launch is a major test to help us restore that capability to America, with the idea that one day space
and
travel
again, shameless plug for myself. If you're enjoying this, we do this when it's feasible, when I can put together.
Ground gas closeouts are complete.
Space is fake. Space is fake. Eddie Bravo said so.
Is to return
but if you're enjoying this, I do other space content. We do other games, period. We have a great community here. But if you're enjoying this and want to see more, hit a follow button. You'll get a notification. Or you can just check Mixer on occasion and see when I'm streaming. Check Twitter as well. I tend to put in there when I'm going live, but there's a schedule kept completely accurate in the Discord as well.
Taking flight once more from American soil as the nation begins a new chapter of space exploration.
Up until now, it's been governments that have sent people into space. And
Cube is a great single-scene movie.
Partners, we are on the doorstep of
remember to clonk that follow button. Or Perm can say it for me. That's on a timer.
It's not often that you get to be part of developing a spacecraft from scratch. That opportunity comes along after many decades.
The only movie I couldn't watch was Gravity. I got sick watching it. I got like a half hour into it, like, oh no.
To see the hardware coming together and seeing, the excitement of the technicians, of the engineers,
It's going to be
I imagine
wonderful to see
from
the
what I saw of
crowds
it that it was more action thriller type material, but still the effects
This is
in it
great to
looked
get the public,
I'm not saying we're
re-engaged
accurate, but
on
looked
human
really
spaceflight
cool.
again.
That was one of the reasons I was attracted to it.
Transportation
Also, it was a
super
space
important to
movie.
humans, because right now
How many
that's
of those
where
get
we
made?
are operating and doing a lot of our work in space. The International Space Station, one of the nation's great assets for research and discovery.
On
is in low
ISS
Earth
news
orbit.
this week,
And the Commercial Crew Program
this
will be
is
providing
in bill form,
transportation to ISS
but the ISS
to
mission is
support that
supposed to
first
end in
step as a gateway to
2026.
space.
I think we're gonna have
And there's a
lot more
bill
opportunity
that was
to
put
do
up
the
in the Senate this
exploration
week that
research
extends that
we
mission
need
to
get us
2030.
To the moon and to Mars and beyond.
There's a larger group of us that are dreaming that potentially could have a ride someday.
I haven't seen
and
First
be
Man.
working in space.
It's a huge goal, a huge accomplishment for both the partners, NASA, and the United States of America.
This is just the beginning.
Apollo.
I know the greatest events in
There's
space
one word that
exploration
sums up Apollo for me. It's a
happened
word
yet.
Kennedy used,
and, that
and
our
it's
destiny
bold.
lies above us.
We're not bold anymore in space, not at a national level. We're cautious, and that's not bad because it's not bad to a degree because NASA
very prescriptive requirements
got
for
overconfident
commercial crew.
and it
NASA
cost
set
us.
high-level requirements based
But
on
there
our
was a
50
time in
years
our
of
history
human
where we were
spaceflight
nothing
experience
but
for
bold,
Boeing and SpaceX to
and
meet.
Apollo is the
Our partners
epitome
took
of
those
that.
high-level requirements and introduced new technologies, procedures, and the
Speaking of
out-of-the-box
Apollo,
thinking that we have
the
come
Apollo
to
11
expect
documentary
from
went to
American
IMAX theaters today. You can
SpaceX
get
is
tickets.
one
It
of
will
the
go to
companies
theaters
that NASA
everywhere
ultimately
next
chose
Thursday,
to
and
achieve this
everybody
goal.
I've seen
And
has says
we've
it's
been able to
phenomenal.
introduce innovative ideas in collaboration with NASA, and together we've designed Crew Dragon to be one of the safest human spaceflight systems ever flown. Dragon and Falcon 9 together have years of operational experience, or what we refer to as flight heritage. The Crew Dragon
Yes,
builds
but
on
this
our cargo
combination of
Dragon's
craft
17
is
successful flights
unproven.
to and from
This
orbit
will be the
since
proof
2010,
tonight.
including 16 trips to the International
The
Space
individual
Station.
pieces are
Not
proven,
only have we conducted
but the
thousands
combination
hours
of vehicles
testing,
used tonight
we've
is
also
not proven
enhanced
yet,
and added
which is
a
why they have to
number
demo
of
it.
safety features. As an example, Dragon now has enhanced and additional parachutes. We used to have 3, and we added a 4th one for redundancy. And one of the most important safety features on Crew Dragon is our launch escape system, which is a huge advancement in the
That
safety
will be
of human
demoed
spaceflight.
later this
In
year
2015,
during the abort
we
test.
demonstrated the system during our pad abort test. Now, the launch escape system is outfitted with 8 Super Draco engines that are directly integrated into the spacecraft body. This enables Crew Dragon
So
to
cool.
maintain escape capability from the launch pad all the way to orbit, a feature that no other spacecraft in history has ever possessed.
Now, following the success of this
From the
mission,
launch
but
pad to
before
orbit.
Demo 2, SpaceX
That's
will
awesome.
conduct an in-flight abort test, which will prove Dragon's escape capabilities during ascent. This test will tell us not only how Dragon will perform, but what the astronauts will actually experience
26
if
minutes.
there were an actual emergency. After these tests, the NASA and SpaceX team will review all the data and verify that all of the systems aboard have operated as designed. This extremely important step allows NASA to verify that SpaceX is meeting our requirements and can be certified to carry our astronauts safely to and from the space station. The first 2 crew members who will fly aboard
There they
Crew
are.
Dragon will be NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley on board that demo
There's his
2
name.
flight
You
test.
guys can see it now.
Then, NASA astronauts Mike Hopkins and Victor Glover will fly aboard the next Crew Dragon mission with 2 international partner crew members who've not yet been announced.
Yeah, and these NASA astronauts will not only be the first to fly on Crew Dragon, but they're also continuing the mission of the International Space
The idea
Station,
that they're going to be able
which
to put
is our
7
premier
people in there still
orbital
blows my mind.
It provides
I just
an
have it
environment
locked
to
in my head that
learn what it takes
pods
for
hold
humans to live
max
in
3
space
people.
for the long periods
It's
that
not like
we
Soyuz has done anything to diminish that in my brain.
Let's take a quick look at the history of the space station and its role in furthering human space exploration.
The International Space Station,
I'll wait.
a football field-sized, million-pound laboratory flying around planet Earth at 17,500 miles per hour. It's our home in low Earth orbit and the bridge
Super
to exploring
low
the far
Earth
reaches of our
orbit.
solar system.
So low it skims the
A
atmosphere
place
at times.
to learn what it takes to live, to work, to thrive in space. Thanks to space agencies representing more than a dozen countries around the world, it went from the drawing board to liftoff when the first piece flew into space in 1998. That kicked off over a decade of construction, hauling the station to orbit piece by piece on NASA's space shuttle and Russian rockets.
That's a cool animation.
And after the first crew arrived in November 2000, we started an unbroken streak of humans living and working in space. Building on the legacy of past outposts like Skylab and Mir, the International Space Station became the training ground for humanity's next great journey.
What a cluster when Skylab first went
Learning how to
up.
live in space for extreme periods of time. Building and perfecting the technologies necessary
Anybody
to
doesn't know the
travel
history
to
of
our neighbors
Skylab,
in the solar system.
watch the documentary
It gave
series
us a place
When We
right on our
Left Earth.
doorstep
There's an
to prepare
episode
for the
on
next
Skylab and
giant
how
leap into the unknown.
disaster was
And
averted.
thanks to the station, a new era in outer space is unfolding. What was once the domain of only nations and governments is now populated by a growing space
See, that's the
fleet from
Canada
American
arm
industry.
on the common berthing system.
Private spacecraft
And
to
that's
fly
what
cargo
they're going to
and
do
crew
now,
members.
that direct
New
dock with
habitats
the
and
NASA
technologies
standard
for
docking
future
system.
space missions, and an open door for companies, research institutions,
But
and
on the
even
note of
students around
international
the world
cooperation,
to do research in space
the Lunar
that have
Gateway,
never
for those
had
of you
the
familiar with it,
opportunity
for those of you not familiar with it, the Lunar Gateway is sort of
all
like
laying
a
the foundation for a
platform
robust
gas station,
economy in
science
space.
station in orbit around
There
the
have been
moon.
thousands of
And the United States has
hundreds of
been
spacewalks,
talking about doing it for a while. They had their
endless
first
hours of
international partner
challenges
sign
and
on to it this
successes.
week, and that's Canada.
all done by humans hailing from countries around the globe. The International Space Station is what we can achieve as a planet when we come together to do the things that are hard. And the work isn't slowing down. Because we're ready for the next giant leap. Because we're ready to go farther.
Well,
Because what we do and learn along the way is for the benefit of all of humankind.
what is that, sweet Dave?
We clearly have an amazing responsibility to continue this research on the International Space Station, and that's what drove the creation of the Commercial Crew Program.
And right now, we're about T-minus 22
She's super
minutes
happy.
and
She
30
just said
seconds
that, too.
away from seeing our first launch as part of Commercial
The
Crew.
practice smile
So
kills
let's
me.
check in with Lauren and Dan to hear more.
Oh, they're talking about Canada helping out.
Thanks, you guys. So for Demo 1, Dragon's estimated round trip is roughly 6 days, and its journey is fairly similar to that of our cargo Dragon when it makes its trip back and forth to the ISS.
Notice, like I was talking about during the
crowd's getting into
Ariane broadcast,
As we
how
await that
calm it
T-minus
was
zero
down in
in just
French
about
Guiana
22
and how
minutes,
it's not
the
very
ground
calm in that lobby.
operations teams are going to be doing a series of system checks just to make sure both Dragon and Falcon 9 are ready for liftoff. The moment we hit T-minus 0 and a successful launch occurs, we'll watch Falcon 9 and Dragon make their ascent until Falcon 9 first and second stages separate and send Dragon on its way to the space station.
At this time, mission operators will prepare Dragon for on-orbit ops, and Dragon will execute a series of burns that gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the space station, as you can see in this animation right here on the screen. As Dragon approaches ISS, it'll hold a few times before making one final push towards the space station, putting Dragon into the same orbital plane as it prepares for its approach and docking maneuvers.
And then next, Dragon will make its approach and actually dock with the space station.
That's
This is
awesome.
going to be a very different process from what we've seen with Dragon cargo deliveries in the past, which use a process called berthing, which requires somebody to be on the station to reach out and grab Dragon with the robotic arm. With docking not necessary, it's going to fly in all on its own.
Dragon will spend
Berthing,
5
not
days
necessary.
back to
They
ISS
definitely need to
before
dock it.
preparing to return home. Following successful completion of Dragon's test objectives and cargo loading operations, the ISS
Automated
crew on board
docking.
will close out
Very,
the
very
cabin,
cool.
perform final system checks,
Also
and
very
complete
awesome in a case of an emergency. If the arm should be broken, they can still get supplies to ISS using NASA standard docking.
onboard Draco engines, pushing it away from the space station.
Like they could get repair parts for the arm up there and not run into the situation where they couldn't berth it because the arm itself is broken.
The final departure maneuver, including the trunk separation, closure of the nose cone, a deorbit burn, deployment of the drogue and main parachutes, and then finally splashdown, at which point teams from SpaceX will move in and recover Dragon from the water.
So that covers what to expect on this mission without.
Don't forget about a minute
but it is
left in the
important to remember
countdown.
that this entire operation
Onboard
is
computer
also a
systems. This is
training
SpaceX standard procedure. The onboard computer takes
So
over.
let's go now to NASA's Jennifer Wolfinger at Kennedy Space Center with more on what's going on behind the scenes to prepare for Demo 2.
Thanks, Lauren. Ripley may be the only passenger on board this time,
She
but
practiced.
our NASA and SpaceX teams are treating this launch as if Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley are flying in Crew Dragon, because next time they will be.
On launch day with the commercial partners, as soon as the crew walks into this room, the suit room, I officially hand them over to the partner. So SpaceX or Boeing officially takes charge of the crew at that point.
As NASA's Vehicle Integration Test Office Chief, veteran shuttle astronaut Shane Kimbrough plays a big part in insulating the crew before launch. As teams have been preparing
Oh,
for
by the way,
uncrewed
while they're showing
Demo-1
suits,
flight, the crew
the
has
same
been suiting
Senate
up,
bill
rehearsing
has a
with
mandate
support teams what
for
they will
NASA
do
to
for
produce its
Demo-2.
next generation suit.
One major task has been dusting off the quarantine playbook. We didn't have to quarantine the crew this time, but for Demo 2, there's a lot of work that will go into making sure the crew is protected from any threat to their physical health in the days leading up to launch. It takes meticulous planning to make sure everyone who comes in contact with the astronauts is medically cleared to do so.
Launch day operations.
So those of you who've seen Apollo 13,
so
Ken Mattingly was
from
grounded. He was scrubbed from that mission because he was exposed to measles.
So to speak.
He never he never contracted measles, but that's what we're talking about the quarantine procedures. They need to limit the exposure of the astronauts to people that aren't going to get them sick effectively.
According to their timeline, so they don't get behind.
And making sure they have a chance to connect with their families before they head to the launch pad.
Makes me wonder how
One
good
last
Roscosmos'
look,
quarantine
at your
procedures
family,
are.
And one last time to talk to them and tell them you love them, and you'll be back seeing those kind of things.
Right now, the Demo 2 crew is closely monitoring the pre-launch milestones inside of SpaceX's Launch Control Center.
Someone had to
including
refresh.
propellant loading that began just a short time ago. The crew is using this morning to train for what will happen on Demo 2.
On that note, if you are having
Everything
trouble
from
with
strapping
Mixer
into
again,
their
it's
seats
Mixer.
to being prepared to abort
no frame
in the
loss.
unlikely event of an emergency.
Full stream looks good right now, so if you do need a refresh,
These kinds of
that'd
rehearsals
be
are
on
not new to
the relay from
testing.
Mixer to you right
But
now.
this morning's uncrewed launch is more than just a simulation. It's their first chance to practice the real thing. We've touched on all the preparation leading to this moment. Now let's talk about where the crew is heading, the International Space Station. Joining me to discuss this is David Brady. He's a scientist with the International Space Station program. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome, Jennifer.
Our viewers
Well,
have been submitting questions on social
it's not up to
media
them.
using the
This question.
hashtag
It's not up to NASA.
#NASA. Let's check them out. Okay. At FlipFlopLife83 says, I can't imagine life without the science you guys accomplished up there. Do you think that this will help prolong space station missions?
Oh, absolutely. And it's so exciting to see the folks involved in this are out there that are so interested in the science.
That's
After
not
all,
the
we're all
answer.
here to celebrate
The answer is
how.
if it's
But
funded.
we need to talk a little bit about
It
the
really
why.
is that simple.
And the
It's
why
not
is
funded
the
past
space station
2026.
exists as a world-class facility to do research in space.
I mean,
so we're hoping that our
it sucks that it comes down to that. The ISS is old. It's pretty old.
Now you might ask,
And
how can you
it would
double
cost
the
a
amount of research by
lot
adding
of
more
money
crew
to
members?
put up a new
Well,
station
as you know, the crew
versus
spends a
extend
lot
the
of time
current life
maintaining
cycle.
the
But
vehicle.
eventually the
They
ISS
also
will
have to
become
be
like Mir,
available
where
for
it's
spacewalks.
it's
And for
older
every
than it's
visiting
useful
vehicle that
for.
comes and goes,
And
they're
there will
an
be a
integral
need
part
to
of that.
do something else to
Once all
create
that is
create a
covered,
space
adding
laboratory.
additional
Now,
crew
do they want to
should
do that
provide the capacity
in Earth
to
orbit?
do nothing
Does Lunar
additional
Gateway
other
that
than
answer?
research. So
I
we're
don't
very
know,
excited
but
at the
I do
capacity
know
to do
that
because
right now
we're
there's no
looking
money
forward to
for
even more discoveries,
ISS from
enabling
the
more
United States past
exploration,
2026.
discovering things that will help commercial companies and also benefiting people on Earth.
It's so exciting.
Oh yeah, it's really cool.
Politics
Let's see what our next
aside,
question is.
Republican Congresses tend to
KCS
fund NASA.
Amadora asks,
That's a fact.
Will any cargo be returning from ISS?
Everything else
with Crew Dragon back to
politics
Earth?
excluded from
Yeah, we're
the
expecting to be
conversation
able to fly
that just
up to
tends to
about
be
200 pounds of cargo
in line with
and
the
also
way they
fly
fund
back
defense
100 pounds
spending.
of cargo, which may
NASA
not
tends to
seem like
get
a whole
more
lot,
money
but
when
one of the
Republicans
things
are
that will be
doing
useful for in the
authorizations
research
of spending.
area is that, for example, we do a lot of life science research. And that life science research is dependent on biological samples. So as you
And
might
at the end of the
imagine, if
day,
you're
it's a
researcher
humanitarian
that does
mission.
biological
I mean, I know we've got
research, you're
people
looking
here
forward to
that we need
getting
to care
samples
about
back
too.
as often as
But
possible,
one day
so
that
you have
sun's gonna.
flexibility in doing your research.
It's
So
it's
the new
ways
CCP
off, but
capability,
for
that's
the
another
long
thing that it will
term, super
provide
long
for us.
term
That's great. That's all the time
survivability
we
of the
have,
species,
unfortunately.
Earth
Thank
is
you
not
so
a permanent
much for
home.
sharing your insights with our viewers.
You're welcome.
Let's check back in with Stephanie and Shiva for an update.
So what's funny,
Thanks, guys. We really love hearing the questions from the fans.
it's funny as I heard a discussion, somebody was talking about how they were enraged by a documentary on Netflix that was exploring how people are so,
which is Launch Complex
I don't want to use the word dumb, but they're so bought into the conspiracy of flat Earth, and they explained how, look at a hurricane, look at a Coriolis effect, and that proves that Earth is spherical. Which I was like, hey, that's a really good answer.
Where SpaceX has completed a 21st century makeover to the launch pad, launching us
1440.
into the next generation of human spaceflight.
In the 1960s, NASA needed a new, bigger, and better launch pad, one capable of sending astronauts on historic journeys to the moon and back. To get there, that new pad needed to be capable of launching the most powerful rocket of its time, the mighty Saturn V.
Still the most complex machine ever built.
And so, in 1962, NASA began building the answer, Launch Complex 39A. At the bottom, a flame trench 1.5 football fields long. And above it, a launch tower connecting to a new concept at the time, mobilized launch platform.
Actually, the wrong way to do
Highly
it.
explosive rocket fuel nearby, an emergency escape system was added. NASA engineers designed a high-speed elevator and a 200-foot-long escape tube down to a blast-resistant bunker 40 feet underground.
There was
In
also
November of
a
1967,
line that the astronauts could
NASA
jump on and
launched the
ride
first
down if the elevator
successful test
failed
flight of an unmanned Saturn V rocket
from the top of the
from
tower
Pad 39A.
in a spacesuit.
Historic missions to the moon followed, and another pad, 39B, was added. Decades later, 39A and B were modified to support the space shuttle
And
program.
SpaceX has heavily modified 39A again.
Liftoff, the final liftoff of Atlantis.
From the 1980s all the way to
See that no matter what, ride the line down.
After that, the pads went dark. 3 years later, Pad 39A got a new lease on life. You see, NASA no longer needed 2 launch pads, so they upgraded it. And in 2014, SpaceX signed a 20-year lease agreement to launch their own rockets from here, as well
5 years
as
into that, potentially 4 years at least, so 16 more years in the lease, 16 plus.
Shuttle and Apollo astronauts once did.
My lord.
SpaceX needed to upgrade the pad.
Zip lines are fun.
The massive rotating service structure used to load cargo into the space shuttle was removed. And the most recent addition? A new crew access arm. A modernized steel and aluminum structure so NASA astronauts can bridge the distance between the launch tower and the Dragon crew capsule. Just under 6 years after the last space shuttle launch, fire and smoke returned to 39A when SpaceX launched NASA's 10th cargo resupply mission to the International Space Station. And a year later, SpaceX showed off the pad's versatility, launching a triple boostered Falcon Heavy rocket on a test flight.
Absolutely, Whisper.
And that helped propel the number of launches here over the century mark, and more are planned. NASA and SpaceX have a contract to send astronauts to the International Space Station a half-dozen times, and they're going to do it from right here at Pad 39A.
And the entire SpaceX team is truly honored that we're going to be launching astronauts again from Pad
Oh,
39A.
there he is, see?
A little over 11
Sweet Dave
minutes.
just
Let's go
stole
back
from
to the
Sanjo.
team at SpaceX hot
Yeah,
headquarters
everything's
in
good.
Hollywood for an
T-minus 11 minutes and 25 seconds. Everything so far is on schedule. There's been some lighting in the background, but there's not been the issuance of any sort of weather warning from NOAA to stop it. I think the storms are moving away.
Dragon since 2010, but in order to transport crew, we have to make some key upgrades to the vehicle.
So it's actually kind of cool. That Whisper was a request effectively to simulcast. And so I know Captain Awesome is either has or is planning on presenting my stream on his stream so that his viewers can tune in as well. So thanks for doing that. For those of you watching, this is DM-1. It is SpaceX's demonstration to NASA of Crew Dragon 2. It is the last Crew Dragon flight without any personnel on board to prove to NASA that we can put astronauts on it. And if successful, we will be able to place American astronauts back to the International Space Station at some point by the end of the year, hopefully.
There's also a touchscreen control panel.
We have about 10 minutes until the launch takes place, and right now we're listening into NASA/SpaceX's live coverage, and we'll leave that up. We'll comment, answer questions as they show up in chat.
And those NASA astronauts have been working with SpaceX from early on to provide input into Crew Dragon's design. And right now they're finishing their training on all of the features of the
And onboard DM-1, and sorry for those of you that have been here the whole time to repeat it, but on DM-1 is a mannequin called Ripley that will record data to has sensors basically replicating the effects on the body as the vehicle goes up to space, and then when it comes down next Friday.
Means of protecting those astronauts, the suit can act as a critical backup in the case of.
But we'll be here for at least an hour as the craft is launched. We watched booster recovery, we watched stage 1, stage 2 separation, and we watched the craft actually deploy its solar panels.
Them to view the station and orient Dragon during manual piloting.
Now let's not
There
forget
goes
about
lightning
Falcon
again.
9.
It's still out
The
there.
design of our rocket is just as critical
It looks like
as
it's
the
off to the
one mission
northeast.
as is the spacecraft. We have been launching Falcon 9 since 2010 to carry cargo Dragon.
T-minus 9 minutes. That fumage you see coming off the Stage 1, Stage 2 fuselage is the cooling of the fuel.
Configuration minimizes separation events, and with 9 first-stage Merlin engines, Falcon 9 can successfully...
T-minus 20 seconds. The fuel pressurization is maximized on the launch vehicle. And I believe that's when the umbilical is detached.
19 first-stage boosters to date. And as mentioned, following today's launch, we will attempt to land the Falcon 9 back on our drone ships in the Atlantic Ocean so that it can be used on a future flight.
And SpaceX also intends to reuse this Dragon. Its mission's already set to be the in-flight abort test taking place later this year ahead of Demo 2.
So look at that.
Now
We know
those
that this
other 9
Dragon,
minutes, let's
this
check back
capsule
in
that's
with
in use
Tom on the
tonight will be
status of
used for the
today's
in-flight
launch.
abort test. We know the booster
Thanks, guys.
that was
We
a
are
Stage
at
1
8
for New
minutes and
Santara
30
Sat 2 a week ago
seconds
Thursday,
until launch.
which
The
we watched
excitement
that
here at
launch.
SpaceX
Those two
headquarters is
combined will
palpable.
then
Just a
form the
quick update
complete
on the
vehicle
status
that
of the rocket and the
minus the
Dragon.
Stage 2 they need to put on. But that will be the vehicle used for the abort test.
Both RP1 and oxidizer. The range is good to go. We are monitoring the weather's all looking good to go for launch. No issues with upper level winds or ground level winds or any lightning. The weather's actually looking really good at the Cape. As John Ensperger always says, the weather is the one thing that everyone talks about, but the one thing that we can't control. Thankfully, it's looking good.
The
for
forecast
launch
is held at
today.
80% probability for launch all week. The lightning earlier was a concern, but like I said, it passed on, and you can still see it, but it's pretty far off.
Hey Tom, welcome to Mission Control Houston. Right here, the teams behind me are looking after the systems of the International Space Station, which is, of course, the ultimate destination
Gotta
of
love
Dragon
there's
launch
an old
today.
school hourglass sitting there.
Over the next day, we'll be monitoring Dragon through its approach to the International Space Station, and that's when things will really start to pick up when it's just a few kilometers away. 3 crew members on board the International Space Station right now, NASA's Anne McClain, David St. Jacques of the Canadian Space Agency, and Oleg
And McClain, by the way, the youngest American astronaut ever in space.
A lot of procedures
Younger
for
than
the
me.
docking operations and the ingress operations. That's when they actually enter the vehicle. Today, they don't really
She's an
have
Army
much going
colonel,
on, a bit of an
as a
off-duty
background
day,
flying
because tomorrow,
helicopters.
that's when they
Super
execute all
cool.
of these
She's been
procedures.
really awesome to have on
Just 1 day
ISS
from now
with the
when
stuff that she's been
Dragon
communicating
docks
back
to the
down,
International
interacting with
Space Station,
kids.
scheduled
She's
at
been
6
great.
a.m. Eastern Time. This is a great time, a blast from the past. The last time that a vehicle docked to this part of the station was the Space Shuttle back in 2011. Again, our job really picks up when Dragon is just a few
Last time
kilometers
NASA
away
standard
from now.
docking mechanism was used
Everything's
was
looking good
2011.
on the station now 255
Crazy.
statute miles over
Crazy the gap's that
Central
long.
Europe. At the time of launch, the station is scheduled to be over central Iraq. That's how fast this thing is traveling. Dragon's going to spend some time chasing it down.
So you see on the bottom graph, engine chill
This
just
is an
started.
exciting time. We have new vehicles coming online to launch humans to the International Space Station. Of course, more humans means more science, which is the one of the goals of the International Space Station, to do scientific research and learn how to explore further on.
Every time they just say
Working
more
with,
science,
commercial providers
I
as
think
well, not just
myself
SpaceX.
and anyone
SpaceX
else who plays
also
KSP kind of laughs because science is
to
this
the space
arbitrary
station,
thing you have
but
to
we're also
harvest
working with
in
international
KSP if you play career mode.
But from here in
It's
Mission
like,
Control
do
Houston,
things
we're
that
gonna sit
gain
back, we actually have
science.
a view of the pad here on the front
Just
screen
it's a
of
funny
Mission Control.
phrasing.
Tom, we'll take it back to you.
Also
to take us
2:40 in the
final
morning.
moments before launch.
The 5:55 until launch.
Thanks, Gary. We are just moments away from our launch of the first crew demonstration mission to the International Space Station. The Falcon 9 engine chill is underway right now. That gets those turbopumps cold enough to pump the liquid oxygen and RP1 fuel to the 9 Merlin 1D engines at the bottom of the rocket. Strong back retract
Hence,
will start
Falcon
in about
9,
T-minus
9
5
engines.
minutes. That's just 30 seconds from now.
Anybody remember
And
what
crew
the
access
Falcon
arm
part
is
comes from?
already in the launch position. Around T-minus 1 minute, that's when you'll hear the call out Falcon 9 is in startup. That means that the Falcon 9 flight computers have gone into startup mode and they are now autonomously controlling the rest of
Nobody?
the countdown.
Or y'all sleeping?
At about T-minus 2 seconds, we will ignite
The Falcon
flight
aspect
computer
of
will ignite
Falcon
the
9
engines.
comes
We'll
from
check
the
power
Millennium
on those
Falcon.
engines for a liftoff
That's what
at
they named it
T-minus
after.
0 when the hold downs release. Just a reminder that this is an instantaneous launch window tonight. If we have a hold for any reason, we will have to scrub for tonight. But we do have a backup window at March 5th at 1:38 a.m.
Yep.
Eastern Time.
Dragon's named after
Dragon
Puff the
team has
Magic
given us
Dragon.
the thumbs up for this, that the spacecraft is ready to go. The range is also green. And
We mentioned it earlier, but
like I
it's
said
Elon
earlier, the
Musk's
weather
way
is
of
looking
trolling
fantastic at the
doubters,
Cape for both launch
because
and recovery.
Puff the Magic Dragon was an
With
imaginary
just about
creature,
4 minutes
and everyone told
30
him he'd
seconds
never
left
be able to
before
do it, and it was all
liftoff. Let's
imaginary when he
listen
started
to the
talking about
final countdown
SpaceX.
on the
It's his
launch
way of
test.
giving everyone else basically the finger. That's the way he's phrased it.
And Starback retract is starting.
The reason for the time of launch, they sort of just talked about it. It's an instantaneous launch window. It has to do with this is the time that they have to take off in order to facilitate the correct optimization burns to intercept ISS. The ISS is moving, right? So there was a great graphic of it earlier, but as the ISS moves, you want to launch at a specific time. You don't want to launch any time because they won't be able to correctly align that intercept. Or an optimal intercept, as we discussed earlier. There's enough delta V in the craft to probably get there, but they want to demonstrate a crewed mission, so they have to launch at the optimal time. And that's why it's an instantaneous launch window. Like they just said, there's a hold, that's it. They'll scrub it, and we'll probably come back tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the morning and do it all over again. But if there's any sort of hold tonight, I would say probably more than a minute. They'll scrub it. It's 3:20 away from liftoff. We're about 2 minutes and 10 seconds away from the onboard computers taking over. And Captain Lawson, if anybody in your chat has a question, please feel free to relay it over.
Stage 1 LOX load has closed out.
Strongback's at a retract angle of 88.3 degrees.
This is the nervous part. We talk about every time we watch a launch. This is so awesome, please don't explode part.
Orbital bleed verification, stage 1.
There's something to be said at the end of the day. It's fire that's making the rocket go to orbit, which is, look at how technologically advanced this thing is, and it's still man's most primitive discovery, with fire. At the end of the day, it's a very unique way of making fire, the hypergolic reaction of oxidizer and RP1. But at the end of the day, it's a flame that's putting this thing into orbit.
Dragon chill water closeout.
Stage 2 LOX load closing out.
While we're counting down this last minute and a half here, thank you all for being here tonight. I know it's early in the morning or really late at night. It's a historic launch. The fact that as many people as do show up for these launches is what fuels me to continue doing them. I would do this for one person, as long as there was interest. But the fact that you're all here watching this together, I said it the last time there was a SpaceX launch, it rekindles a feeling for me of school when they would stop school, when they would just roll in the AV carts and we would watch a shuttle take off. And the fact that those of us who are interested come together and watch these means a lot to me. So thank you very much for being here, hanging out, learning, sharing, geeking out over rockets. It's awesome. 1 minute.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Ground gas closeout is complete.
And that is Falcon 9's onboard computers have taken control of the countdown, meaning the onboard computer will abort now, not ground. Hey, look at that lightning in the background still. It's right off to the left side of the Dragon capsule.
Go for launch. Stage 2 is pressing for flight.
Stage 2 press for flight. 30 seconds.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Stage 1, pressing for flight.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition, liftoff.
Go. 100 miles an hour, or kilometers an hour.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
pitching complete, or pitching downrange. It means rolls complete. Strong back. It's me too. I thought it went sideways, dude. I thought it went sideways. I ain't gonna lie. When the strong back fell off, I was like, oh no. Thank God I'm not the only one who thought that. I saw it go down. I was like, oh Jesus.
Stage 1 throttle bucket.
45 seconds and has just crossed 800 kilometers per hour. There she goes.
For those of you just joining us, you are watching a live view of the Falcon 9 rocket as it ascends through the atmosphere carrying the SpaceX Dragon 2 capsule to orbit.
Max Q. Those of you new to that term, maximum dynamic pressure on the vehicle. They'll throttle it back up now.
Maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. As you can hear in the background, the excitement at SpaceX headquarters is unbelievable.
Max Q is a big thing because it means the craft experienced as much pressure as it's going to experience during its flight.
You heard that call out from Max Q on the nets. The Falcon 9 actually throttles down its 9 Merlin engines to reduce aerodynamic loads on the vehicle. It is now throttling those engines back up.
Yes, they do. They get a lot more excited than the French people down in French Guiana, that's for sure.
Seconds is going to be 3 events in quick succession. The first one is going to be the main engine cutoff, or MECO. That's when the 9 Merlin 1D engines that you can see on your screen right now will cut off shortly before a stage separation at 2 minutes and 38 seconds. Shortly after that, the Merlin vacuum engine on the bottom of the second stage
the SpaceX launch. So after MECO and after they have S1 SEP, they will try to recover that booster, and they will show that.
Main engine cutoff, stage separation, and second engine start.
It's really something to see if you've never seen it before.
20 seconds from now.
5,500 kilometers per hour at 2 minutes 24 seconds. Watch the foil. You'll see it. You'll see pressure change the way the foil looks on the right-hand side as they get ready to separate. There it goes. Second stage is lit. S1 boosters falling back down to, of course, I still love you.
Here at SpaceX headquarters, we did have a successful main engine cutoff, a stage separation, and as you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, that second stage engine is currently started and accelerating Dragon towards orbit. On the left-hand side of your screen, that is a view from the first stage as it makes its way back down towards
that first stage has control surfaces that are changing its attitude as it descends back down. And for those of you unfamiliar, there's a drone ship out in the ocean called, of course, I Still Love You, that booster is going to land on. It'll land on it upright if everything goes correctly. And they'll reuse the booster later on this year for the abort test.
So stage 1 is going to execute 2 burns before landing on the drone ship. The first is the entry burn start, which is starting at...
You never seen that, Captain Awesome? Yeah, it's pretty sweet. You should go watch the Falcon Heavy launch where the two side boosters, which are both Falcon 9 S1s, landed in synchronicity just at the same time back on land.
If we didn't do that aerodynamic re-entry
the timing. Watch the Falcon Heavy.
And it would potentially break it apart, so we got to slow it down. From there...
Yeah, so like they were just describing, on the left-hand side, as the S1 goes down, as it descends, it's going to fire its engine once to really slow it down, and then it's going to fire it again, basically as it touches down on, of course, I Still Love You. That's the name of the ship, Of Course, I Still Love You.
To hopefully bring stage 1 down to a beautiful stop right on the drone ship.
That's right, and while all that's happening, the second stage, which you can see glowing bright here, continuing to power Dragon,
8250 at 440.
Just about 9 minutes.
8250 kilometers per hour, and accelerating.
Seconds is where it's targeted to cut off. Down to a single engine, but that one providing a little over 200,000 pounds of thrust to carry Dragon through the upper parts of Earth's atmosphere. Not as much resistance to fight against once you're up this high. And it's going to get Dragon into that initial orbit, and it's still going to be a couple hundred kilometers beneath the station.
So we're halfway from stage 1 SEP to the entry burn of the stage 1.
to then begin the chase down of the orbiting laboratory.
In between that
5
and the
minutes,
landing
11
attempt, you'll have
seconds
secondary
counting
engine cutoff, or
past
this
launch.
engine's cut
Overall
off.
So far, indicating nominal performance. So we're continuing to see great stuff so far from both stages of Falcon 9.
And then after the S1 lands, according to the gauge on the bottom for their activities, you'll have the Crew Dragon deployment, which means an S2 separation.
Temperatures are good. And stage 1 continues to come back nominally, and we look over there on the left.
Look
on
at
the
your
screen,
very
you see that
high-tech
picture of
zero-G meter sitting there on the seat. I love that that's what they did. They put a stuffed animal in there.
As long as we have the view, as soon as
On the far
Dragon's
side, that's Ripley.
separated and
That's the
done,
mannequin that's collecting sensory data, and they seriously threw a stuffed animal on the seat so that you could see it
keep an eye out.
rise up off the seat when they hit zero-G.
Just a couple of minutes from now. 6 minutes past launch.
Those of you that heard me say some of these things multiple times tonight, I appreciate you bearing with me as I repeat them. I'm saying them because I keep an eye on who's people rolling into the chat, and I do want to re-explain things for people so that they're not hearing me say something that they don't have a reference for. I want to compliment me on my beard. Hey, Riot, how's it going? So if you're just rolling in, I don't know if you've been watching with Leech, but Miko's done, S1 SEP's done. They launched on time. We are coming up on the entry burn for S1.
We're just under a minute away from that entry burn on stage 1 that I mentioned before.
Well, thanks for showing up, Riot. Yeah, thanks for being here, Captain Awesome's viewers. Thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit. Hang out for a little longer. You see that S1 burn is pretty sweet.
Feels like it was 30 seconds ago. Continuing to carry Dragon up.
One cool thing, right, that I've mentioned a few times is Crew Dragon 2 has the NASA standard docking system. They won't need to berth it with Canadarm, which is the first time since Atlantis.
Stage 2 propellant tank pressures are looking good. The burn continues to be healthy.
That entry burn, hopefully we have cameras on it, but that depends on their signal to the booster.
That entry burn is going to start.
I don't think they have it. They would have switched to it by now.
Watch. Let's listen in on the call-outs.
Stage 1.
Oh, there it is. There's your entry burn on the left.
Entry burn has started.
Look at that. That's beautiful.
Switch 3 M1D engines reigniting. Burn is going to continue on for about another.
S2 with Dragons at 20,000 kilometers an hour.
So a little back-to-back action now as we see stage 1 coming back down towards Earth, stage 2 still making its way up into outer space. The Dragon still nestled on top, getting ready.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
One more burn for landing.
End of that stage 1 shutdown.
Seco 1 coming up.
Going to continue to coast its way down, using those grid fins for attitude control and steering.
Next
and in just under a
Cruise ship
minute.
AOS.
That's right. It's coming up in about 10 seconds.
Cruise ship AOS. I believe that's what they said. That's got to be, of course, I Still Love You. Acquisition of signal on S1.
Invex throttling down for Seco.
Seco's lit and it hasn't shut down. There it goes.
Stage 1 is transonic.
And we have had a successful shutdown. Vimback.
A little bit longer. I got a little nervous there. The engine wasn't shutting down for a second.
At the start of that burn, stage 1 will be traveling at 275 meters per second. That single engine burn is going to bring that from 275 to 0.
Coming up on stage 1 landing on, of course, I Still Love You.
Just hear that stage 1 landing burn has started.
Landing burn has started. There it is. There's, of course, I Still Love You out in the ocean.
Let's see if we get it.
Yes.
Landed on the autonomous spaceport drone ship. We got video the whole way.
Unstable video connection. Not on the money, but upright in the bullseye still. It's still amazing that they do that.
Ship about 500 kilometers away from where it launched from. The vehicle will now undergo its safing procedures. And the recovery
Literally
team will make sure it's strapped down, and it'll make its way back to Earth. Or sorry, back to Cape Canaveral. It's already on it.
Indeed.
So there's still a lot
Hey, look,
more
it's
to go
floating.
here.
It's
We have
floating.
Dragon separation coming up. Let's go back to Tom Perderio to cover that next big milestone.
So cool.
Wow, what a landing. Coming up very shortly.
It's funny that one was off like that. It's off. I mean, it's super picky for us to say something like that, but the high seas were in effect a week ago Thursday, and it bullseyed it.
Should be occurring around
The hottest re-entry for an S1 ever for SpaceX.
Dragon, separation confirmed.
The Dragon just separated from S2. That was the call out. There it is.
And there it is. You're looking at a view from the top of the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. And hard to make
So you're
out
looking at the S2, and that's Dragon pulling away from it. I guess it'll be this way.
Flying in space for the first time.
Invert my hands.
After a successful separation. This is a great day for everyone here at SpaceX and NASA. Let's go back over to Gary Johnson and see
So
how
they don't have cameras on board Dragon to show us the solar array deployed? Because that'd be awesome.
Thanks, Tom. We were definitely enjoying hearing some of the cheers from over you guys. You can actually kind of see behind us. We got quite a number of viewers here in
As
the
they
International
wave.
Space Station Flight Control Room. Very exciting time that we have now that they're waving. So this is, for us here in Mission Control Houston, this is just the beginning. Now that Dragon is in orbit, we have just over a day until Dragon's scheduled to be docked to the International Space Station. There's a lot of milestones to get through. The crew have been, again, reviewing their procedures, getting ready for some of those moments, again, monitoring the approach and even performing some commands while the Dragon is close enough. But again, there's a lot of work to do. We have docking scheduled for 6 a.m. tomorrow. We'll continue to monitor Dragon during that time. In the meantime, we'll toss to Lauren and Dan to witness some of these final milestones of Dragon now that it is in orbit. Back to you.
Thank you, Gary. Now for a typical CRS mission, right about now, we'll be awaiting solar array deployment. But as a reminder, Crew Dragon has solar array body mounted along the surface of the trunk. They're already activated. They're producing power.
So she just said that the solar arrays are already activated and producing power on Dragon.
Tom just mentioned the nose cone is going to be opening, and that's going to expose those guidance and navigation control sensors and the docking mechanism. And then pretty soon, Dragon's going to execute that series of burns to gradually raise its orbit up to align more closely with the International Space Station.
Quick mission overview recap. We had a successful launch of stage 1.
So as we're going to take this, they're getting ready to wrap here. So what we're going to do is talk about what's going to go on next with this. So
Dragon has separated, it's activated,
when they bring forward video of docking, I'll definitely bring that to you on whatever next stream we do, post availability.
And a big thank you to the Eastern Range for helping make today's launch possible.
And we will talk about re-entry and watching the splashdown, of course, post-Friday. So I'm going to turn them down so I can talk a little bit here.
Going to arrive and dock just before 6 a.m.
So again, 6 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow for Crew Dragon docking at ISS. I will, of course, try to do my best to bring you guys video of that when I have it. Then, of course, again, Splashdown Friday. I will get video of that to you as well. And then we won't have another launch until the 13th of March. Then we have 13th, 14th, 15th. There's scheduled launches each of those days. One of those is a Delta IV, almost assuredly going to have video of that. We will have a Roscosmos launch in there. Video of that's kind of maybe. And outside of that, we'll get back into the rotation of XCOM, playing some games. But the last week's been super busy. Replay of launch.
Sure. Ignition, liftoff.
I catch blueberries by them using sparks, or by pressing a certain button.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
That's a good button press. All right, so it is 3 o'clock in the morning. We hung out for an hour and a half to watch effectively 20 minutes of a launch. But seriously, guys, one, thank you very much for being here. Hopefully you found this enjoyable. You found talking to each other fun. The overall presentation hopefully was informative. And again, if you haven't, we do this when it's feasible with a launch, so we can all watch, learn, discuss, ask questions, explore the configuration together. Next stream for me will likely be Tuesday. We'll get back to XCOM. My back is feeling better. I know everyone who watched this schedule saw me saying things like, my back is wrecked this week. I got a TENS unit on it today, which is an electrotherapy unit, and I feel achy but no longer pain. So, yeah, get back in XCOM 2. It's been a week. I'm also thinking about putting Surviving Mars on the schedule. Astroneer is going to kind of fall off just because I finished it and there's nothing really to do there. I'm also thinking about playing Detroit Become Human, but we'll talk about that on Tuesday night. Again, everybody, thank you so much for being here. Hopefully, again, you had fun. Thank you for being up this late to watch some really cool stuff with NASA. So far, it looks like a success. And we'll see you Tuesday night. I'm probably going to throw you back to Captain Awesome because he was awesome enough to bring his group over to us to look in on what we're doing with the launch. So if you're going to stay up, hang out. We'll get you to Captain Awesome in just a second. Otherwise, have a good night, get some sleep, and I will talk to you all in the morning. And again, thank you very much for being here. And yes, absolutely see you guys in Discord.
Oh my goodness.
There he is
that's
on the screen behind us. We're looking at him now. There's Captain Awesome. I'm going to kill the stream and get you guys over to him. He's playing Division.
You're going to kill me. Please don't.
Have a good night.